I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. So, Elena, can we ask you a few questions? Can we ask you a few questions?
Yes.
So you are in the third grade at Jewett School of the Arts, and what's your favorite subject there?
Dance and art.
Dance and art. Very nice. You have some folks back here very happy to hear that. And what would you like to do when you grow up?
Be an elementary science teacher and a yoga instructor.
Ooh.
Wow.
Well, Elena, you answered all the questions 100% correctly. So, so thank you so much for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. You did a wonderful job, and we appreciate you coming out tonight and doing that for us. Thank you. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Who do you have with you?
My mom.
Could you stand up, please? And who else? Do you have someone with you from the school?
Mr. Sears.
Mr. Sears. Very good. Thank you, Elena.
You're welcome.
Okay, so this school board meeting of June 18th is called to order. Madam Superintendent, do we have any revisions to the agenda?
Yes, we do. Item C8, new administrators, revised backup. Item C105, student dues and fees, revised backup. R120, revised job description, executive assistant superintendent, attached revision. Item R123, policy updates, revised backup. Item R117, recommendation for instructional and administrative personnel, revised backup. Item R108, FSBA legislative committee and FSBA board of directors, add item. That concludes the revisions for this evening.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. So this time I would entertain a motion to accept the June 18, 2019 school board meeting agenda as revised.
Move for approval.
Second.
A motion, a second. Any discussion? So the motion on the floor is acceptance of the June 18, 2019 school board meeting agenda as revised. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And Madam Superintendent, we have some special recognitions.
Yes, we do. Let me get to that page here. I'd like to ask Ms. Kay Fields to please step to the front for our special recognitions. Next, I'd like to ask Joe Tedder, Polk County's tax collector, to come forward for a presentation on kids' tag art.
Turn the podium over to our honorable tax collector. It's my privilege to be able to say hello to you this afternoon and to share with you just briefly how important this collaboration with the tax collector's office is to what we do in our school district. So students like Elena who love art and love dance, I'm really glad about both of those things. She's benefiting directly, and I think it's important for us to remember that we're going to talk about dollars today, but these are the kids that are benefiting from it. In the fine arts, they cost money. Especially if you look at visual arts, there's consumables every day. You need new pens and new markers and paint and paper, and the list goes on. And that's what this program is specifically targeting. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you, no introduction needed actually, but our honorable tax collector, Mr. Joe Tedder.
Thank you, Beth. Good afternoon. How is everyone doing?
Great.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. I always truly appreciate the opportunity to come before you. This is a wonderful time of celebration for us in the Tax Collector's Office and the Kids Tag Art Program. I will tell you that the Kids Tag Art Program, as I remind you every year, has been around for quite some time. We started it a little over 13 years ago. And it started out with a neat little concept of when we would go and speak to elementary school classrooms like your student here today, and I would go and do the Great American Teach-In, and I was always challenged with what am I going to talk about to these third and fourth and fifth graders that is interesting. And if you think about the tax collector trying to talk about something interesting to adults, much less children, that is a challenge. So what I would do is bring the tags, the specialty tags, the manatee tag or the Florida State tag or the gator tag, and I would have the kids guess what these tags were for and where the money went that was raised from these tags. And what was neat is every year, a few weeks later, I would receive beautiful thank you notes from these children. And the way that these children would thank me is by drawing their own little tag. And we thought, wouldn't it be neat if we could take this expression that they used to express themselves through art, actually turn it into a product and actually sell that product, and then all the funds of those sales go back to the elementary art teachers and the art classroom. And that started, again, about 13 years ago. And to date, here just in the Polk County schools, we have raised over $400,000 through this program. And it's become such a popular program that other tax collectors across the state have adopted it. And just last year, we crossed over $1 million raised statewide, and now it's over $1.2 million. Out of a program, thank you. Out of a simple child wanting to express their thanks in using art. Now, this was a wonderful idea when we came up with it 13 years ago, but it would have never gone anywhere if it had not been for the support of the school board. You, as a group, and the people that served on the board before you wholeheartedly supported this, and the superintendent as well. Your current superintendent, Superintendent Byrd, your director of fine arts, Beth, and also the coordinator of visual arts, Nancy Puri. All of them have been pure cheerleaders for this program, and it would not be successful, not only in Polk County, it would not be successful across the state if it wasn't for their efforts. And so I am very thrilled to be here to thank them for that. But more important than all of them, and more important than all of you, I wanted to make sure that we thank and acknowledge the wonderful art teachers that exist in the elementary programs. Some of you that have been around a while and have seen this artwork, if you look at the artwork 13 years ago compared to the artwork of their children today, it is a vast improvement. And that's because these teachers, even though they're teaching, they're also learners. And they continue to learn more and more about how to actually teach kids to design art in this particular medium. So a great thanks to all the teachers for them being wonderful teachers and wonderful mentors and supporters of this program. I'd also like to acknowledge that we have a number of community partners, sponsors, that without their financial assistance, this program would not exist. For those of you that might be watching on TV or in the crowd, you can always be a sponsor of this program as well with your financial gifts. But we'd like to make sure that we acknowledge some of those. This year we had a new one, Dentistry for Children, Dr. Bopp and Dr. Tarver, the Drummond Company, Bartow Ford, the Public Supermarket Charities, Mid-Florida Credit Union, the Florida Heart Foundation, Legoland Florida, D-Print, the Ledger Media Group, Hall Communications, Point and Pay, Unlimited DPI, and Lamar Outdoor Advertising, as well as the Polk Arts Alliance, the Polk Museum of Art, the Polk Education Foundation, and of course you, the Polk County Schools. And our main sponsor that is now into their 5th year of our main sponsor, giving $25,000 a year to this program, Southern Homes of Polk County. So their only commercial they get from me is that if you're considering buying a new home, please at least walk into one of their model centers and tell them Joe sent you, and that might help me at some point in time in my life. Again, today we're here to issue a check, and I'll bring that up in a minute, but I just wanted to also take just a moment, if you, and please indulge me. Like I said, we started this program 13 years ago. It was an idea that we had around a table of a group of people talking about it, but as tax collectors, we're in the business of tax collection. And so it was an idea, but we never could figure out exactly how to pull it off. And we had hired someone in our organization shortly before that and she has a number of other duties, a tremendous amount of very important responsibilities. And she is retiring this fall. And this individual was the one that kind of heard us talking about this in a back room, and she said, let me figure out a way to make this happen. And if it was not for her, we would not be celebrating close to $500,000 here in Polk County and over $1.2 million across the state. And I just wanted to ask her to come up so that you guys can express your thanks to her and her hard work, and that is Martha Robert.
Joe tapped me in the audience and said, I'm going to ask you to say a few words. So, all I can say is, if you had a boss like Joe Tedder that breathed, wind into your sails and said, let's do it, and gave me all the latitude to make this thing go, then you know what a joy I've had for the last 14 years. Along with some great colleagues that have been there for me, and they have worked this program. And I want you to know that the whole tax collector's office loves Kids Tag Art, as does everybody that gets involved with it. So I'm going to be watching. I may retire, but I'm going to be watching and hoping that you all will continue to embrace it and let it grow and let it really bring value back to the schools, to the children. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Last but not least, or two more things, we started a couple years ago recognizing the district and the school board that sold the most tags per student, and board member Fortney received the traveling award, and so we are presenting this to you at this time. And if nothing else, we're here now to give you your big check.
Yeah, okay. I think Mr. Townsend had something he wanted to offer.
I was just going to offer Sarah Beth particularly a chance to. Martha's very active, not just in this, but in the public education partnership in Winter Haven. Sarah Beth works very closely with that. I just wanted to recognize that she's a supporter of public education in many ways, not just this way, which is fantastic.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
So this year, the total is, for the whole county, including private schools and public schools, $45,878, and for the public schools, $37,550.
It's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Joe. We appreciate it. My artwork from 13 years ago still looks the same today. So I have to live through the children. So thank you for making sure that we keep our programs alive and well in our schools.
Jackie, if I could just say, Mr. Joe and Miss Martha, we can't thank you guys enough, and your team. And the impact that you guys have made in our community is everlasting. And who would think that a tax collector would do something like this?
Thank you. Giving money back. Mr. Chair, this concludes the special recognitions for today.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. So at this time, I would invite anyone who would like to come forward and speak to items on the agenda. Now, we will have a separate opportunity to speak to policy updates and to our student progression plan, but if you'd like to speak to any other item on the agenda, please come forward and do so at this time. Okay. If you would, sir, please give us your name for our records.
Yes, my name is James McCurdy, and I'm probably the newest member of this organization as a bus driver. I haven't been assigned a permanent route yet, still a sub-driver. So I just wanted to touch on a few items tonight that I was a nationwide truck driver for 34 years. And throughout my time driving truck on the road, I got the opportunity to talk to a lot of employees from different school districts across the country because they would come to the truck stops and eat. And most of their complaints was all the same. And one of the things that I have been reading up on is the lack of bus drivers across the country. And the reason for the lack of bus drivers is low pay, limited hours, part-time status, unaffordable health care, startup costs, and lack of support. Since I've been here at Polk County, two of those items I have witnessed, which is low pay, and the second one is support for the drivers. we've had some incidents on buses where it just seemed like nobody cared that the bus driver was in the right and they wasn't going to do anything. Margie Patterson had one just the other day. But one of the things I'd like to say is how many of you have had children and be driving down the road with them sitting in the back seat, and you're trying to calm them down and keep your eyes on the road, keep from having an accident. Well, guess what? That bus has 13 extra rows behind it. So you got all them children back there that are screaming and hollering, the bus driver looking up in the mirror, and it takes away from his or her attention on the road. So you talk about safety for the kids first. Well, let's make it safety for the kids. The attendants, I have been reading up on some of those. And some of the school districts across the country pay the attendants the same as they pay the drivers. And I believe that's a fair thing to ask, because a good attendant is well worth their weight in gold on that bus. If they're taking care of their job on the bus driver can concentrate on the safety of the vehicle and the children. I guess I'm out of time. I have some other things I'd like to talk about, but we'll do that another.
Mr. McCurdy, were you addressing a specific item on the agenda, or were those just general comments?
I'm sorry?
Were you addressing a certain item on the agenda, or were those just general comments you were making?
Those are basically just general comments.
Okay, that's okay. I just want to make sure we weren't missing a connection somewhere.
Yep.
So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of the April 9th, 2019 work session. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move for approval.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? So the motion on the floor is approval of the minutes of the April 9th, 2019 work session. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the May 14th, 2019 school board meeting. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So motion on the floor is approval of the minutes of the May 14, 2019 school board meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval for the consent agenda for June 18th, 2019.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Miller?
I just want to make a comment. This consent agenda is very lengthy, and a lot of this conversation happens during work session. So if you were not in the work session and looking for more information, please watch that when it becomes available to you. This is an extra long consent agenda, and I just want to make the public aware of that.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Is there any further discussion? And I appreciate you bringing that message forward. So the motion on the floor is approval of the minutes of the May 14, 2019 school board meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. The consent agenda.
Oh, excuse me. I apologize. The motion on the floor is approval of the consent agenda, which was very lengthy. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And Madam Superintendent, we have new administrators.
Yes, we do. It is my pleasure to recommend appointment of Cindy Brayton as principal of Davenport School of the Arts. Mrs. Brayton previously served as the assistant principal at Davenport School of the Arts. She attended Warner Southern College, earning a bachelor's degree in elementary education. She went on to earn her master's degree in educational leadership from Nova Southeastern University. Please join me in welcoming me, Ms. Brayton, as principal of Davenport School of the Arts.
Thank you so much. I've been passionately devoted to life at Davenport School of the Arts for the past 11 years. Special thanks to Superintendent Byrd for giving me the opportunity to continue that passion and commitment at DSA. I'm looking forward to preserving the culture at DSA while adding positive layers of improvement and successes in both the academics and the arts. As a servant leader, I love and look forward to serving our DSA family, which includes students, parents, staff, and the community. Thank you.
Yes, go back. Who do you have with you this evening?
Okay. I'd like to recognize some special people that are here this evening. You might regret asking me to do that, but I'll do it quickly. At this time, I'd like to recognize my family. Without their support, I wouldn't be able to be as devoted to Davenport School of the Arts as I am. So my husband, Brad, my son, Corey, and my daughter, Shelby. Thank you. I also am very blessed this evening to have lots of DSA stakeholders because DSA is a family. And so at this time, when I call your name, please stand, and I'll do it quickly. Dr. and Mrs. Varner, Mr. and Mrs. Wilmoth. This is parents, past students, community members, teachers, all of the above. Shelley Reese, Yabi Alexander, Jim and Kathy DeFabio. Some of my students, past students, present students, Danielle Reese, Gabby DeFabio, Genesis Reyes. I'd like to also thank my regional superintendent, Tracy Collins, who has been a huge support as well as providing consistent guidance to me as a growing administrator. Thank you. Also, my principal mentor, Ruth Reimer, who mentored me through the principal intern program 5 years ago and continues to mentor me today. Thank you, Mrs. Reimer, Dr. Reimer. And at this time, just for 30 seconds, could I please ask Brian Keir, Mr. Brian Keir, to join me at the podium? I have been beyond blessed to work for such an amazing principal for the past 11 years. Thank you for the legacy that you leave before us. Thank you for your godly leadership and your wise counsel. When I think about the lives you have touched through the arts, I'm overwhelmed. Thank you for your vision of the arts you brought to Davenport School of the Arts 21 years ago. I have big, big, big shoes to fill. Thank you.
Cindy's going to do a great job of moving DSA forward, and I'm looking forward to all the great things that are going to be coming in the next 20-plus years.
Congratulations and thank you. I'm pleased to recommend the appointment of Polly Bruno as principal of Doris Sanders Learning Center. Mrs. Bruno previously served as a senior manager of exceptional student education. She attended Troy State University, earning a bachelor's degree in psychology. She went on to earn her master's degree in educational leadership from Nova Southeastern University. In addition, she earned her educational specialist in special education from North Central University. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Polly Bruno.
Thank you so much. I'm returning back to Polk County from taking a little hiatus of about 8 months to work on my dissertation. So coming back to being a principal, thank you, Ms. Bird, for that opportunity. And thank you, I don't see Dr. Steinke here, but Tracy Collins, thank you very much. Michelle Townley, thank you. Thank you for all the support. Ms. Collins has been a boss of mine for many years, peer principal for years, so thank you for all that. To the board, ESC, Students with Disabilities, I'm very, very passionate about. I live it every day, walk it every day, and am very, very grateful to be able to go to Doris Sanders, so thank you for that. And I have with me tonight my husband, Ty, and my son, Jackson. Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. Next, I'm pleased to recommend the appointment of Shauna Bergwall as principal of Garden Grove Elementary. Ms. Bergwall previously served as the assistant principal at Lena Vista Elementary. She attended the University of Florida, earning a bachelor's degree in journalism. She went on to earn her master's degree in educational leadership from University of South Florida. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Bergwall.
Superintendent Bird and board members, it's my honor and privilege to begin serving as a principal of Garden Grove. This is something that I've prayed for and worked toward with the help and guidance of several people. I've been blessed with a supportive husband and family who've continually encouraged me on this wild ride, as well as strong relationships with educators I'm honored to call my colleagues. From the first principal who hired me as a third grade teacher, to others who gave me opportunities to grow and lead in several different capacities, I'm grateful. I would especially like to thank Amy Weingarth, who's here tonight. She's the principal at Highland City, where I previously served, and Kathy Riley for continually providing me with guidance and support. I look forward to working with Michelle Townley under her very close supervision. And I would like to, I don't need to be watched that close. One of my professors, I'm currently working on my doctorate degree at Florida Southern, and she published today a quote that I'd like to read. It says, "The biggest mistake administrators make is the relentless pursuit of what can be counted at the expense of what truly counts." And that's something I think I'll remember as I lead Garden Grove. So here with me tonight, I have my husband, Jason. Our two children are 20 and 17, and so they are off. One of them that's volunteering in our community at the theater. The other one has found a friend who's a girl. So they are doing that. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Congratulations. Next, I'm pleased to recommend the appointment of Wallace Self as principal of Sleepy Hill Middle. Mr. Self previously served as the Regional Executive Director, Northwest Florida, for the Florida Department of Education. He attended the University of Florida, earning a Bachelor of Science in Psychology with a minor in Educational Psychology. He went on to earn his Master's of Education in Curriculum Instruction and Technology from Grand Canyon University. In addition, he earned a Specialist in Educational Leadership from Liberty University. Please join me in welcoming back Mr. Self. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Board. The last time I was here 4 years ago, I brought my mother and father. There has been a church family death. They weren't able to make it this evening. But when I told them I was coming back to Polk County, they were ecstatic. I said, and in the day since I was able to tell people that I was coming back, I have been met with so many smiles and so many welcome backs that it has warmed my heart. And I know this is where I'm supposed to be. Ms. Fields, I look forward to working with you in the coming years. And Board, I would offer at any time you would like to come visit Sleepy Hill Elementary, the door is always open. Please do not call, just come. If you're riding by, come at any point, at any time. We'll be there and we'll be ready. And as I stood here 4 years ago, I told the board that as I serve my country, I will serve the students and the staff at Sleepy Hill Elementary with everything I got. Thank you all for having me back.
Would like to get one group picture with all of you, and congratulations again to each of you. This concludes all of our new administrators for this evening.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent.
He did.
Thank you. Thanks. 3.
Okay.
We have
That's better than 426.
telling you.
I love it. Love it, love it, love it.
So the next item on our agenda is approval of the appointment of Howard Kay to the Sales Tax Oversight Committee. And since I nominated Mr. Kay, it's my privilege and pleasure to say a few words about him. I'm pleased to bring Howard Kay before the board as a nominee to the Sales Tax Oversight Committee. Mr. Kay is a resident of Lake Wales, where he has lived and served this community for more than 35 years. During his distinguished career as an attorney with Lilly O'Toole & Brown, he also served his profession as a member of the Polk County Trial Lawyers, past president, as a member of the Florida Speakers Bureau, and as a Supreme Court mediator. Service to community is one of his most noteworthy accomplishments, as he humbly served on the YMCA Service Club, Leadership Lake Wales High School Booster Club, and founded Lake Wales Youth Football. Mr. Kay continues to serve the Polk County community as a board member for the Lake Wales Charter Schools, Vanguard Schools, and Victory Ridge Academy. He serves as a math tutor and board member to the Family Literacy Academy of Lake Wales, and throughout all these roles and responsibilities has also served children for 25 years as a guardian ad litem. Mr. Kay will make a tremendous addition to the Sales Tax Oversight Committee, and I would like to make the motion to nominate Howard Kay to the Sales Tax Oversight Committee.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So the motion on the floor is to nominate Howard Kay to serve on the Sales Tax Oversight Committee. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on our agenda is a nomination and appointment of Jill Dorsett to the Sales Tax Oversight Committee, and I'll defer to Ms. Fields to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Before I make the nomination, I wanted to publicly thank Ashley Troutman. Ashley is very active in the community, and he was on the Sales Tax Oversight Committee before Ms. Jill Dorsett enters. Ashley has done an amazing job. He chaired the Sales Tax Oversight Committee for several years, and we can't thank him enough for his commitment to our community. And I wanted to make sure that we had someone to come behind him that would be committed to our school district as well. Ms. Dorsett is not new to our school district. She's worked as a principal, assistant principal in various capacities, not just in Polk County, but in other parts of the state as well as in Georgia. She is currently a realtor, and she is committed to provide whatever resources she can in her soon-to-be position as a member of the Sales Tax Oversight Committee. She's very active in the community, and again, she is a product of the school district. And so it is with great appreciation and excitement that I nominate Jill Dorsett to serve on the Sales Tax Oversight Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. Do we have a second?
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Townsend?
Yes, I'm glad Mrs. Fields mentioned Ashley Troutman. It's my rotation on the committee, and at our last meeting, because when he was his last meeting, and I also appreciate all the work that he's put in, and all the work he did with the sales tax committee, and I just wanted to add my agreement on that.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Is there any further discussion? So the motion on the floor is appointment of Jill F. Dorsett to the Sales Tax Oversight Committee. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is appointment to the Florida School Boards Association's Board of Directors. And we had a consensus this afternoon, and at this time I would entertain a motion to appoint Ms. Reynolds to the FSBA Board of Directors.
Move approval.
Second.
So a motion and a second. Any discussion? So the motion on the floor is appointment of Sarah Reynolds to the FSBA Board of Directors. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We also had consensus this afternoon to appoint Ms. Fortney to the FSBA Board of Directors as an alternate. So what's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval to appoint Ms. Fortney as the alternate to the FSBA Board of Directors.
Second.
So a motion and a second. Any discussion? So the motion on the floor is appointment of Ms. Fortney to the FSBA Board of Directors as an alternate. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is appointment of our legislative committee members to the FSBA. And again, we had a consensus at the work session this afternoon. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to appoint Ms. Reynolds as our FSBA legislative committee member.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So the motion on the floor is approval of Ms. Reynolds to the FSBA Legislative Committee. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And in addition to that, we, at this time, I would entertain a motion to appoint Ms. Miller to the FSBA Legislative Committee as our alternate.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So the motion on the floor is appointment of Ms. Miller to the FSBA Legislative Committee as alternate. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is to approve bid number 042-PGB-0519 for internal account services awarded to Carr, Riggs, and Ingram LLC. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So the motion on the floor is approval of bid number 042-PGB-0519 for internal account services awarded to Carr, Riggs, and Ingram. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is approval of the Title II, Part A, supporting effective instruction, supporting the effective instruction continuation grant application in the amount of $4,877,943. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
So a motion and a second. Any discussion? Motion on the floor is approval of the Title II, Part A, supporting the effective instruction continuation grant application in the amount of $4,877,943. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is approval of the Invo Healthcare contract for immediate planning and implementation of behavioral and mental health support for the 2019-2020 school year. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So the motion on the floor is approval of the Invo Healthcare contract for immediate planning and implementation of the behavioral and mental health support services for the 2019-2020 school year. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is C-112, and this is approval of the Florida Virtual School Contract. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Townsend?
For the benefit of the public, and I guess even for the benefit of me as well, can somebody tell me what's different? Like, what is this different than we did last year? Just so I'm clear.
Good afternoon. Annually, we do approve a contract for a franchise agreement. As I shared in the work session, we are looking at different options for that. But again, for this year, for the franchise agreement, which will give us the access to all the curriculum for our particular students and some particular areas, we do need to continue that one more year. As I also shared in the work session, we will be bringing back other contracts where we'll be looking at other ways that we can have multiple providers for different options for our students as required by statute. But this is the overarching umbrella for our curriculum with Florida Virtual.
What we did last year as well? I mean, like,
No, sir.
What's the difference?
Okay, so what the difference is we still have to make sure that we have right at 3 options for our students. And this is but one option. This is the kind of the mainstay of it. We'll be bringing back some of those other options in the July meeting. And again, this is one of those continual contracts that we look at each year. We are investigating different options for the overall contract for our franchise. Other districts have done that, and there isn't but a couple out there. I will say that it is my impression that the governor and the commissioner has spoken to Florida Virtual about what the services they're providing and also the cost of this. So I think they put them on notice, but this is something that we really need to be able to put in place.
Well, no, but we said it's a continuing contract, so we've been dealing with them in an ongoing way, correct?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
But that's what I'm asking. There's really nothing changing here. We may change coming up, but
yes,
this is
sir.
okay.
Yeah, but this is one of the 3 options that we utilize.
But it's just a renewal of an option that we've already been using.
Sir. Yes, sir. It's
Okay.
just the magnitude of it that we have to have in place is what makes it so large. But we are bringing those other contracts back to you in July for the other 3 options.
Okay. Any further questions? Thank you, Ms. Townsend. Thank you, Dr. Hicks. So is there any further discussion? So the motion on the floor is approval of the Florida Virtual School Contract. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item R113, and this is approval of the contract with the Invo Healthcare Associates for OT, PT services in an amount not to exceed $146,280. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval. Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? The motion on the floor is approval of the contract with the Invo Healthcare Associates for OT and PT services in an amount not to exceed $146,280. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is approval of the contract with educational-based services for speech language pathologists in the amount of $957,600. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval. Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So the motion on the floor is approval of the contract with educational-based services for speech and language pathologists in the amount of $957,600. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is item C37, and this is approval of the 2019-2020 annual dual enrollment articulation agreement and addendum for Polk State College. What's the pleasure of the board?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Bridges, I will be abstaining from voting on this item due to my relationship with Polk State College, and I have completed the appropriate paperwork.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? So the motion on the floor is approval of the 2019-2020 annual dual enrollment articulation agreement and addendum for Polk State College. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is R115, and this is approval of the conveyance of property along Wallace Road near the Jim Miles Center to the Board of County Commissioners to allow for the construction of roadway improvements. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? The motion on the floor is approval of the conveyance of property along Wallace Road near the Jim Miles Center to the Board of County Commissioners to allow for the construction of roadway improvements. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item R116, and this is approval to remove the reverter clause from the quitclaim deed for 2.149 acres of property adjacent to Purcell Elementary School campus. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Townsend?
This might be worth, again, mentioning to the public what this is for. It's to enable the use of a boys and girls club in Mulberry. I mean, I think that's, we think about education as a wider circle than just us. You know, it's good to make sure we're all working together as organizations. So, good thought.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Ms. Fields?
I'm happy to support this motion. Mike Borders is a unit director for the Mulberry Boys and Girls Club, and he does an amazing job with his team. So I think it's very befitting that we would approve the motion so that they can move forward with a new facility for their program in Mulberry.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. Is there any further discussion or comments? So the motion on the floor is approval of removing the reverter clause from the quitclaim deed for 2.149 acres of property adjacent to the Purcell Elementary School campus. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item R117, and this is approval of the administrative and instructional personnel recommendations. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Motion on the floor is approval of the administrative and instructional personnel recommendations. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is approval of the non-instructional personnel recommendations. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So the motion on the floor is approval of the non-instructional personnel recommendations. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item R119, and this is approval of the temporary duty assignments. What's the pleasure of the board?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So the motion on the floor is approval of the temporary duty assignments. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is item R20, and this is approval of the revised job description of the executive secretary to the superintendent. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? The motion on the floor is approval of the revised job description of the executive secretary to the superintendent. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is approval of the instructional and non-instructional contract reappointments for 2019-2020. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So the motion on the floor is approval of the instructional and non-instructional contract reappointments for 2019-2020. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is item R22, and this is approval of the proposal submitted by the schools of McKeel Academy as presented at the May 14, 2019 work session. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Townsend.
Just again, for the benefit of the public, this is an interesting vote. McKeel's going to expand, do some expansion on their existing middle high school campus, and we're going to draw a zone to some degree around that school and give the kids who live near it, preference to it. It doesn't have teeth per se in the sense that those kids are required to go there or guaranteed to go there, but they do get priority. I'm very interested to see how this plays out. It's I think a good example of creative thinking in how we're going to try to bridge the gaps between charter and traditional or choice and non-choice. It's no secret that we have a big divide here in this county, and this is an encouraging small step toward trying to come to accommodations that benefit kids. We've done something similar to this at Lincoln with our school, and I'm just interested to see how it works. I appreciate the superintendent's effort here. And I appreciate McKeel's effort here, and again, look forward to seeing how it plays out.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Ms. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to echo a little bit of what Mr. Townsend said and thank McKeel for coming up with a very innovative idea to make sure that the students that live across the street from their school can go to their school if they so choose. They came to us with this request offering to pay for the building and also to make sure that those students could go to this school, which we hear a lot about charters trying to cherry pick the best students that they want. And I think this is a great example of what charter schools were designed to do, and that they're truly taking care of the kids in their own backyard. So thank you to Ms. Bird for working on this, and Carolyn and your team. And also thank you to Mr. Black at McKeel and the rest of your board for the leadership on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. Ms. Fields?
Just basically wanted to echo what was said with Mr. Townsend and Ms. Reynolds, but I also wanted to commend our superintendent of schools, making sure that follow-through was done. And we've been having discussion about the need for more of the students from the north end of our city to benefit from McKeel's work. And so this is reality and something that's going to benefit years to come. And in addition, I believe this is the first time that I can ever remember where we have someone who's actually investing a lot of dollars in the facilities. I believe that's correct. So we want to commend them for having the vision and the wisdom and understanding to do what's best for students.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. Is there any further discussion? So the motion on the floor is approval of the proposal submitted by the schools of McKeel Academy as presented at the May 14, 2019 work session. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is related to policy updates. And before we open the floor to public discussion, I would like to invite Ms. Dodge forward to just give us a brief overview of these policy updates.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hope you can hear me. There are two policy updates that we're asking for final approval from the board for this evening. The first is number 2371 related to Hope scholarships. Those changes have been made are being made because of a request from the Department of Education to align with the guidance that they've provided for those policies. The second is a grant funds policy, and changes are being made to align with our purchasing policy in terms of the authority that the superintendent has and to the practices that our grants department has been using.
Thank you, Ms. Dodge. Appreciate it. So at this time, I would invite anyone from the public to come forward and offer comments related to these two policy updates. If you'd like to offer comments related to these policy updates, please come forward and do so at this time. Okay. Seeing no one coming forward, at this time I would entertain a motion to approve policy updates 2371 related to Hope scholarships and 6110 related to grant funds. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move for approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Townsend.
I just want to note one of these policies is the bully scholarship policy that the legislature passed last year. They're adding some wording here. I don't know what the exact numbers are of the way this is supposed to work. If a child experiences bullying, they're then given the opportunity to leave the school and go to some other school on a scholarship. What has overwhelmingly happened in basically every bullying case that I've heard anything about, or that people have talked to me about, the child does not want to leave the school. They don't want to leave. They don't want to leave their friends. They don't want to leave their classmates or their teachers. They want the school to address whatever they perceive to be the bullying. I think it's interesting that rather than help provide the resources to provide the kind of attention that we ought to be providing to every child in schools, the legislature wants to offer a means of escape that no one wants. And I'm very pleased with the behavioral plan we put together and talked about last meeting. I think it's a real world alternative to this, which is just politics. And we have to agree to it because it's law, but it's a law that nobody's gonna use. And it would be nice if they passed laws built around the actual experiences of kids. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Madam Superintendent, do we have someone who could maybe answer this question? As I read through the policy, it appeared to me that it was mandatory to offer the scholarship to students who reported that they had been bullied. Is that correct?
Ms. Dodge is coming forward, and she'll go through that with you.
Thank you.
So to make sure we're clear on that one for you.
Yes, sir. That's what the statute requires.
Yeah, and I wanted to comment on that because what we've seen are instances where parents come forward or students come forward and they indicate they've been bullied, and the first thing that we're required to do by state law is offer the opportunity to take advantage of this scholarship. And it sounds like this is the district saying, we want you to move on, we don't want you here. And I want to make it clear to the public that's not the case at all. We're not telling our students that we don't want them in those schools, and we certainly want to provide the supports for them. But we're required by law to do that. So I hope the public understands that.
That's correct.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Dodge. All right, so is there any further discussion, any further comments? So the motion on the floor is approval of policy updates 2371 related to Hope Scholarships and 6110 related to grant funds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is related to our student progression plan. And before I invite public comment, I would invite Dr. Akes to come forward and give us a little recap of that.
Good afternoon. Mr. Wilson, are we going to start the clock? Because I just need to make sure I understand the length of time.
We'll give you a little extra time if you need it.
As y'all know, annually we go through and update the student progression plan. And while some of these changes are enacted by statute changing, some of them are not, some of them are substantive changes, and some of them are not. So what I wanted to do and what the board chair and superintendent asked me to do was actually go through and highlight what I would consider a substantive change and make sure that if there's any question or discussion that we're able to do that. The first one that comes up would be actually on page 15, and really it's the non-discrimination language, and we made sure that it was in line with our school board policy, and we made sure that it was noted in the right place and within the SPP, and we did that to align with the board policy. The next was on page 16, and really it's the language to provide assistance when we onboard our ELL students, making sure that we have assistance for interpreting the transcripts at all levels and making sure that we understand where to go do that. And I'm glad that we're able to put that piece in there. The next piece is on page 16, and it goes right back to the Hope Scholarship language, making sure that it aligns with the current policy and that it's explicit in there what the procedures are to do with that. And that was new language as it was by legislation. The next one that I believe is a substantive language change really goes on page 20, and what we're doing on this one is in grading, making sure that they're standards-based, make sure that students have 2 standards-based grades per week in the grade book as we go through the year. And this is an update. And the other thing that we put in place this year is a secondary grading guideline. This is very similar to the one that we have in elementary. The grading guideline is not a board policy, but purely a guideline for schools and teachers to use. But the piece that's going in the student progression plan is the 2 standards grades per week. The next one's page 22. And this was the statute where ELLs are no longer exempt from state testing for that year, initial year period. And if you'll remember back in March, we brought that to you for an update right before testing, making sure that we had that in place. That came along with ESSA. So we wanted to make sure everything was aligned with that piece. You've already enacted that in the current one, and we updated that in the 1921 also. And the next one that I'd bring to your attention would be on page 42. And this deals with the middle school promotion, and it talks about the core courses that are required with that. Remember, in middle school, we don't do credits. We actually do course completion. And it actually outlined what that progression would be and what those courses would need to be in the core areas. And the last one that I felt was a substantive change was kind of the due process language that we have put in place in ensuring that students that are enrolled in our magnet or choice programs, that there is a specific due process in place involving regional assistant superintendents in the event that a student is not being successful there, and what they would need to do to try to help get that student back to being successful with not just immediate dismissal of those students from those magnet or choice programs. So we put that in place just again to ensure that the regional assistant superintendent and the district office was involved with that.
Thank you, Dr. Akes. Any questions from the school board members? Okay. So before we vote on this matter, I would offer that anyone from the public, if you'd like to come forward and speak to the student progression plan, please do so at this time. So if you'd like to have any comments or speak to the student progression plan, please come forward and do so at this time. Okay? If there are none, then I would entertain a motion to approve the updates to the 2019-2020 student progression plan. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval. Oops, sorry.
So a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? So the motion on the floor is approval of the updates to the 2019-2020 student progression plan. Mr. Townsend?
I just wanted to pick up the last thing that Dr. Rakes talked about there. And it goes back really to the McKeel discussion we just had and some of the work we've done at Lincoln. About again continuing to draw together the choice and non-choice layers in ways that are meaningful and serious. I mean, it's a hard issue to navigate. I appreciate the systemic work going into to working on it. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Ms. Whitney?
I just need a clarification. The 2 standard-based grades, you said that was for secondary. Elementary already does that? My expertise is not elementary.
No, ma'am. What I referred to was that the elementary already has a grading practice guideline in place. That's what I was referring to. So the secondary grading practice guideline was kind of mirrored that same idea behind it, that it's for a guideline, not for the actual, not as a policy in place. So.
All right. So the 2 standard-based grades is policy.
It would be policy, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And I just want to clarify for folks that are not, every subject has standard-based standards.
Yes, ma'am.
Like that, I just want to make sure everybody understood that.
The only thing that I would say separating things out would be if you looked at the CTE courses, they don't call them standards. They have another reference point for that. But in essence, it's the same initial idea is that we would have the grades would be based on the standards of the course. Yes, ma'am.
And then those 2 grades would be by choice of the individual teacher?
Absolutely. The teacher owns the grade book, as always. We're just trying to make sure that we're aligning the practices across the district in an effort to look at a student who got an A in an algebra course in Auburndale. That A would look something similar to, would show the mastery as if it were.
Or even
at
like one school?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr.
Yes,
Hicks.
ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Hicks. Thank you, Ms. Fortney. Any further comments or discussion? So the motion on the floor is approve the updates to the 2019-2020 student progression plan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Madam Superintendent, you have a report?
Yes, I do. I'd just like to remind everyone our next meeting will be on July 30th with a work session that starts at 12:30 and a school board meeting followed by 5 p.m. here in the superintendent's conference room at 1915 South Floral Avenue. I also like to remind the public that we are on holiday hours, so all of the schools and district offices are closed on Fridays. We hope you have an enjoyable summer, get rest, and look forward to seeing you back at the start of the school year in August. Thank you. This concludes my announcements.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Mr. Bridges?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You'll recall at the work session earlier, there were some new policy revisions brought to you as well as the 2019-20 Code of Student Conduct proposed changes for first review. The next step in that process will be to have a public hearing at the school board meeting in July. So I'd request authority to advertise those public hearings to be held on July 30 during the regularly scheduled school board meeting that evening.
Okay. These are policy changes for first review, and that's it?
Yeah, the policy changes that were brought to you this afternoon and the changes to the Code of Student Conduct.
Okay. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the request to advertise as indicated by Mr. Bridges.
Move approval?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So the motion on the floor is approval to request to advertise a public hearing for the items indicated by Mr. Bridges. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll see to it. We'll see you at the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges. Is Ms. Matthews here? I think she is out of town. All right, so we'll move on to our board members' reports. We'll start with Mr. Townsend.
Thank you. I think I have a little map graphic that should be teed up for, I talked to Rachel about that. There we go. I just wanted to throw this out to the public and the board. I put this little map together last week. Well, let me back up real quick. Local districts basically have two ways to raise money on their own, like to raise money from home. One is the sales tax for construction, which we just approved, which the voters just approved, and the other is a property tax that happens that has to be renewed every 4 years through referendum. That can go to pay teachers. It can go to pay bus drivers. It can really go to anything we want to spend it for. The map I put together, because of the way the state has done funding now for a decade, local districts are increasingly taking matters into their own hands to try to pay their people or try to build facilities that we need. Again, we just did the sales tax, so we've taken care of that side, but increasingly school districts have to have both. And I just wanted to, I'm not here calling for a referendum on that tax today, but I do want people to look at that map. Everything that's darkened is a school district that has already approved an additional mill to pay teachers, to pay bus drivers, to do the things that everybody wants done. If you track the I-4 corridor, it goes all the way from Sarasota to Manatee to Pinellas. Only Hillsborough, us, and Osceola don't have it. Then it goes over to Orange and into Lake. And then really interesting to me how continually it goes north down the middle of the state in counties that don't have high value oceanfront property. Marion, Alachua, Lake, and Clay. And of those counties to the north of us, only Alachua is what you might call liberal in politically. I mean, it's the home of a University of Florida, but Clay County and Marion County and Lake County are as anti-tax conservative counties as you're going to find, and they've still decided to invest in their teachers, in their bus drivers, in their kids. And then you look down to southeast Florida and you see all the big districts down there, which do have enormous tax bases to begin with, but have added on to them. This is a reflection of investment in intellectual and developmental infrastructure for our communities. I hope I'm planning to share this with economic developers and civic folks. I want folks to understand this reality. Many of these approvals were done in the last 2 years. I mean, they've been done very recently, and it's I think it's a thing we're going to have to, as a community, think about. And I wanted to kind of get the ball rolling on thinking about it by showing that at graphic. Also, maps are fun to play around with, so I enjoy doing that. Secondly, this is Marianne Capizzello's final meeting as the president. Is president your title? The president of Polk Education Association, our local teachers union. My first real conversation I ever had with Marianne did not go well. She, it was a couple of years ago. I had said something obnoxious, and she objected to it, and that'll happen. Over time, I have come to. I've come to respect her very, 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 very much. I can tell you this: never once in the time before I started to run for office or after has she ever lied to me. She has told me the truth always. She's never sugarcoated anything. I think she has helped us avoid enormous numbers of problems that the public never heard about because she was there to intercept them. I think in many ways she's been more collaborative than we have sometimes deserved. And I consider her a friend. And I'm going to miss her in my short time. I'm very, very excited about working with Stephanie, who's our new president. President-elect, is that? Yeah, okay. But I just wanted to publicly express my appreciation to Marianne, who's also just a warrior for kids and for a public education. We're not going to agree on everything. Management and labor will never agree on everything, but we don't have to be at each other's throats. And to that end, Larry Milhorn sent all the board members a really, I think, interesting suggestion that I hope we'll think about. I certainly support it. I think maybe the best example of collaboration between staff, between management and labor here actually occurred before I got on the board. It's the health clinics. My understanding on this is that Marianne was a true driving force behind creating them, and I think the product that emerged from that has been very successful and sort of a shining example of what we can do when we work together. And Larry's idea was that one of those health clinics should be named for Marianne. Now, I'm not going to ask everybody to go on record about this today, but I certainly support that. And more than just honoring Marianne, I think it's a statement about common purpose between management and labor. And I think it would make a really nice gesture, not just for the past, but for the future as well. So I hope we'll think about that. I'll follow up on that. But again, I just wanted to say thanks to Marianne for your advocacy and friendship and directness. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Townsend. Is that it? All right. Ms. Fortney?
Well, I think I concur with Billy for sure. I wasn't going to bring that up tonight, but we did receive that request, and I don't know. I tried to find out what we were supposed to do prior to get that happen so that we would have it in place before we put it out in public. That's all right. But, I too would like to see the health clinic named after Marianne Capizzello. She has been, for 17 years, the voice of reason sometimes, the backbone of teachers and secretaries and our paras who never get thank you'd hardly by most folks that do a backbreaking job. I have stood on the side of the road for Marianne Capizzello more than anybody else, I can tell you that. Waving signs. Whenever she called, I showed up because I feel like we're stronger together. And I'll always feel that way. So I have a card for you here, Marianne, when you go to say your piece, your final piece. And also back to the map that Mr. Townsend put up there, one of the first things I heard about Polk County when I got elected to this position was we are student rich and property poor. And every time I go to a training, I realize how true that is. We are student rich and property poor. I personally would be willing to pay more on my little tiny house to support better pay, a livable wage for our employees, all of them. Now on to something positive. Mr. Hill and Superintendent Byrd, I wish I had a hand to give you all for all the hands you shook at graduation. I only did about 9 of them, and it about slayed me, but I know those kids appreciated that for sure. One speech in particular, if you did not get a chance to see it, was Mulberry High School's valedictorian. I didn't know I was supposed to bring tissues to some of these. But let me tell you, it was an amazing, poignant, life-changing speech that young lady gave. And if you have not YouTubed it, I believe, Sarah Beth, how many views?
As of 2 weeks ago, it was over 100,000.
Yeah, it is amazing if you have not done so. I did go to the FSBA conference on Thursday and sat through a session on the census. And I'm going to reach out. I see Commissioner Longworth sitting out there. Yeah, again. Hello again. Reach out to the city commissioners and the county commissioners about getting together a counting group. The census gives us a huge amount of money, and if we are undercounted, those kids will end up in our public schools without adequate funding. And last but not least, we took 70+ people over to the FEA rally from Polk County. Reverend Mincy was there. We had community leaders, we had teachers, we had administrators, we had everybody you could possibly think, all trying to get the same thing across, and that is we are stronger together, and we are being starved at a local level, and we have got to stand up and unite and fight for public education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fortney. Ms. Cunningham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few items as well tonight. First of all, I just want to do a shout out and a thank you to Miss Angela Usher. The northeast side of the county is absolutely exploding, and it's hard to keep up. And we've had meetings here the last week of school, if you'll believe it. We had the new Davenport community meeting, which was to discuss the renovation of the old Davenport School of the Arts facility there. And we had a great turnout, and the city commissioners for Davenport were so positive and so excited that we were going to upgrade that facility in order for it to open a year from now. So it's anticipated to open up as a K-5 school in Davenport, a new elementary school, next August of 2020. In addition to that, she scheduled a fabulous meeting at Loftman Oaks to talk about rezoning for Citrus Ridge Academy. We opened it just a few years ago, and we're bursting at the seams along with a bunch of portables, and we're landlocked because we have no place else to go. So we had a great meeting, and I just wanted to say a thank you to Tracy Collins, Michelle Townley, of course, Miss Leatherwood, our principal at Citrus Ridge, and Miss Aponte, the principal at Loftman Oaks, for sitting down and putting our heads together. Some obstacles came up during the meeting, and the ladies were so gracious to kind of pull together the resources and say, hey, what can we do to make this work? How can we make it work? And so I was very encouraged with our staff. So I just want to thank you so much for being there and for offering to, hey, let's go outside the box. How can we make this work? And it sounds like we're headed in that direction. So, and Mr. Hill, of course, was there representing our district as well. So we thank you, sir, for that. So that's moving forward. We then had, at the end of the school year, a wonderful volunteer appreciation at Loftman Oaks on a different day. And I just want to thank Ms. Aponte and her staff. I have never seen a group of volunteers so loved and so appreciated. And it just makes such a difference because, quite frankly, it takes a village to raise a child. And in today's days, for a lot of our kids, a positive gesture, a hug, a smile, reading a book to them makes all the difference in the world. And to hear all these individuals talk about what they do, how many hours they've given, if you will, to the school. It was just awesome. So I wanted to thank all the volunteers at Loftman Oaks Elementary School and Ms. Aponte and her staff for welcoming them and putting on such a wonderful, wonderful appreciation. Also, Mrs. Bird and I attended at Dundee Elementary Academy a wonderful memory garden dedication. Miss Susan Gann, who is one of the art teachers there, worked with the children over the past year, and they created the most beautiful mosaics and memory garden in honor of Principal Pam Henderson, who passed away. And it was just gorgeous. It was a butterfly garden. They had all of the students and parents after the awards ceremony in the cafeteria all kind of go outside, and then some beautiful words were said by Principal Tatum. And then everybody pretty much hugged, and every student got a little flower as they were exiting the garden. And they've built it as such that if any other folks end up leaving our domain, if you will, that there's places in the memory garden for their plaques for an appreciation or a memory plaque or something like that. So it's a beautiful legacy that's been created, and I just want to send a thank you to Principal Lana Tatum for continuing that legacy of Miss Henderson and providing an opportunity for the fifth grade students to say their final remarks to Miss Henderson. It was really, really beautiful, and thank you, Miss Bird, for being there. I know it made it extra special for the staff and the students that morning. We've had a ton of graduations, oh my goodness, and the only thing I want to tell the students is go out and conquer the world, but don't forget where you came from. Think about, no matter where you go and what education you get, come back and give back to the community that gave you your foundation. I also attended the Hall of Fame and Honor Graduates Banquet, and I had the pleasure to induct Mr. Ralph Fryer, who's the Executive Director at Ridgeview Global Studies Academy, and he is more well-known on campus as Papa Fryer, wonderful, wonderful human being who's been in education for over 51 years, and rightfully so that we inducted him into the Polk County Schools Hall of Fame. And last but not least, I attended the Sunshine State Scholars Conference, and I, quite frankly, up until a few months ago, I'd never heard about it. And the top STEM students, science, technology, engineering, and math, in the state of Florida are nominated by their districts to attend this conference. So you've got your 100 best and brightest, I guess, students in STEM, and they bring you into this conference. It was amazing. And the students are paired into groups. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. And they put out 4 topics that the state of Florida is currently trying to figure out how to handle. One of them was the aftermath up in the Panhandle after Hurricane, I believe it was Michael, went through. And due to that, there's so much lumber and so many trees and debris in people's yards, and I mean acres, 50, 60 acres of nothing but wood piled up taller than me. That's saying, maybe not saying much because I'm so short, but very, very high, and yet they can't do anything with it. So they've put think tanks out there with these students and asked them to go into these rooms and work with industry experts that they have assigned that have come from around the state to try to figure out and solve some of these problems. One of them was water quality, and there were several others. Absolutely amazing. So I just wanted to say, number one, this guest speaker, one of them, was our Florida Department of Education Commissioner, Richard Cochran. And I was shocked to see someone, of his stature attend this event. It was phenomenal. And of all the school districts, every school district in the state of Florida was represented. But let me tell you, there were only 2 officials there. And the 2 officials that represented our state legislature were from Polk County. The only 2 in the entire event. And they were Representative Colleen Burton and Representative Sam Killebrew, which I thought was really awesome. It made the students from Polk County very proud that 2 of our representatives came out and watch them be recognized there. I also want to do a shout out to Chancellor Jacob Olivia. He was the master of ceremonies for the whole event. And went around and talked to the students, and it was really amazing. And they also pulled in all of the universities and colleges in the state of Florida were represented there to talk to the students. Obviously, their whole premise was, we want you to take the talents and the skills that you have and stay at one of our state universities in Florida to be able to give back. So henceforth, why I said what I did about our graduates. Think about going in state. If you don't, do what you have to do, get your degree, but certainly come back and give back to the wonderful community which gave you your foundation here. So I just thought that was a great weekend, and it was awesome. So I just want to thank our Florida Department of Education for putting on such an awesome event for our students here in the state of Florida. And that concludes my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. Ms. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to pass these out for each of you. This is from the City of Winter Haven Public Education Partnership, and Winter Haven's Chamber of Commerce. During Teacher Appreciation Week, they had one of these thank you cards in every teacher's box, and they gave an envelope to every cafeteria, every maintenance department, to make sure that every staff member in the Winter Haven area got a thank you card from the 3 organizations. And each of them have a quote at the top. The true power of teaching is in the capacity to awaken something within others, and it's something students reclaim years later by recalling the impact our teachers had on their formative years. Travis Hansen. And then it says, on behalf of the entire Winter Haven community, we recognize and honor you for your tireless effort and commitment to our students. As a staff member, you have one of the most challenging and fulfilling jobs, literally shaping and changing lives. Your commitment, passion, persistence, and desire to change lives is inspiring. Because of you, kids in Winter Haven will continue to thrive and be equipped for success because of the way you invest in their lives. So each one of our staff members received one of these, and going into the Winter Haven area schools during Teacher Appreciation Week, seeing them all propped up like this in the boxes was incredible. But then going in the last week of school and seeing that they're still on teachers' desks, because that's how much they appreciated them, was really cool. So I wanted to make sure that those organizations were recognized for going above and beyond. They also used Lake Region to print all of them, which was a great collaboration, I thought. So a few other things. Of course, graduations, the end of the year, are one of my favorite parts of being a school board member, because I really do love getting to hear all of the speeches. I know Ms. Fortney and I were both in tears multiple times at Mulberry's in particular. It was a rough one. But, we had one student at Mulberry come through and tell every person on the stage, thank you so much for this opportunity. What kind of 18-year-old boy says thank you for the opportunity to go to school for the past 13 years? So you have moments and he meant it. And you have moments like that that are just remind you of why you do what you do, and they're truly inspiring. So a few other things. Sorry, my calendar tried to close. The Polk Vision Leadership Polk Luncheon was back in the middle of May, and the guest speaker was Mr. George Tinsley. And instead of getting him a gift for being the guest speaker, they decided to collect books to donate to the PEP Tutoring Center in his honor. So there were almost 250 books donated to the PEP Tutoring Center that all have a little label inside of them that say, thank you, Mr. Tinsley, and that they're in his honor, which, if you know Audrey Netlow, she got a little bit teary when we brought them in that afternoon, because she was so excited to have those books for the kids. A couple other things. The Hall of Fame ceremony was a blast, and I want to thank whoever in the planning team let me sit with the kids, because that is my favorite part, was getting to sit with our oratorical contest winners. Also, on that note, the PR team deserves a huge shout out for graduations, because as many as each of us did, they were there every day, all day long for weeks. Literally, I don't think some of them left, even to go home and sleep. They just seemed to always be there, and always with smiles on their face and happy to do it. So we appreciate them. The last thing is that I woke up to so many Facebook notifications Thursday morning from people congratulating Miss Susan Copeland, who was named the Consortium of Florida Education Foundation's CFEF champion, which is one thing to be recognized by your state coalition as a champion. It's another thing for all of your peers to be posting on Facebook about it and how proud they are to know you and how much they look up to you. So if you see her, please congratulate her, because she truly is a champion for all of our kids here in Polk and around the state. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. Ms. Fields?
I won't repeat a lot of the things that my peers have said. May was a very busy month for us, but I do want to acknowledge the 4 men and women that were inducted into the Hall of Fame. I want to congratulate Dr. Maxine Montgomery. She's the professor of English at Florida State University, where she teaches courses in American, African American, and multi-ethics classes. I also want to commend Perry Blocker, and she is a retired educator for our school district. And then Lieutenant Colonel Robert Iman, currently assigned to the Headquarters Department of the Army at the Pentagon. He wasn't able to attend, but his mom did a very good job receiving his award on his behalf. And then, as Ms. Cunningham referenced, Mr. Ralph Fryer, Executive Director for Ridgeview Global Studies Academy. And we're very blessed to have such amazing people that have been inducted into the Hall of Fame, and having past recipients to come as well, and to interact with the salutatorians and the valedictorians, recognizing them for their accomplishments as well. And I wanted to also reiterate what Ms. Reynolds said. There's a lot of work that's involved when you do events, and the Community Relations Department should be commended for the volunteer breakfast that they do annually, and the Hall of Fame, and all of the other events that they do. And so I want to personally thank them again for their hard work. I also wanted to thank Dr. Kate Blackburn. She has been the principal at Sleepy Hill Middle School for some years, and she's done an amazing job there. And now she exits, and she's going to continue to do great work. I think she's at Daniel Jenkins. Okay, and she's going to do a great job there. I am very excited about Mr. Wallace Sepp coming back. You can feel the energy when he was speaking tonight. He was at Churchwell Elementary School, and the school was suffering, and I believe it was a D, if I'm correct. It's been a while. And he was able, with staff and with the support of the parents, to elevate that school before he left, going to the state. I believe they were either a B or an A. And so I am just excited about what he's going to be able to do along with his team as he pursues becoming the principal at Sleepy Hill Middle School. I think he said elementary, but it's really middle. Yeah. But he was so excited. So just want to congratulate him and thank him in advance for what he's going to be able to do. And I won't say anything else because it's already been said. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. Ms. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And like Ms. Fields, I think we should start from the other end sometimes. Just kidding, because we don't want to repeat all of the great things that have been said. I do, as a new board member, I do want to mention the graduations were moving. The ones that I felt the most excited about were our adult school graduations. If you've ever been to one of those and listened to what life has done to some people for them to come back just to get their high school diploma, we have a great leader over at my East Area adult, and there's a West Area as well that works hard to make sure people's don't give up, that the one thing they're going to do, that they set their mind to, that, you know, we help them do that. And I don't know that we recognize that population enough. Also, our center schools for our students who are profoundly disabled, to see what it takes for them to be able to complete their high school, you know, that's a good one. I think Mr. Hill enjoyed that one too with me, because it is very moving. And you're right, we need to learn to pack Kleenexes. And I was invited to New Beginnings, which is a charter high school that Ashley Wright runs. And I've always been a big fan of what they're doing over there, but I'd never been to a graduation. And those students, the fact that they're accomplishing something that they've been told would not happen and they did not have the opportunities to do, to see that work for them was really great. And Sam Killebrew is also on their board and very big part of that as a representative here in Florida. So I want to help promote what they're doing over there because it's the only one. It's the only one around. So if they're helping a population that we'd have lost anyway, we need to celebrate what that looks like. The Hall of Fame was very exciting. That was my first year attending that. And to look at the salutatorians and valedictorians and what they've done is really inspiring. It makes me, I always say I believe in the youth. The youth is going to save us, and I do believe that. I think that we have some great leaders coming out of Polk County, and I can't wait to see what they accomplish. I did want to say I really appreciate Tony Camarillo and the RP Funding Center. It was difficult as a Winter Haven alumni. It was, that was a little hard to move across to Lakeland to graduate. You felt it a little bit, but they did everything they could there to make people feel comfortable. It was a clean and very well-run and efficient environment for all the graduations, which they ran back-to-back. Some of them were there 3 and 4 graduations in one day, and to move that many seniors with their parents is a feat. So I appreciate the work that was done there. And there's 2 things I want to mention in closing. One is Stuff the Bus. I know everybody's getting ready to go into the summertime, but you're going to hear very soon us talking about that the buckets going out again to stuff the bus, and that's a very important service that's done here in Polk County to help students with supplies in school, and they really provide a lot for our schools. So if you see those around town, or if you want to help volunteer, the Lakeland Kiwanis does a lot with that. Please do. We need to make sure that our students are prepared. And the last thing, there's a lot of summer learning going on. Still, over the summer, we have summer programs, but there's also a food program for students. It's called the Summer Break Spot Program. It provides free meals to kids under 18 while there's no school. No registration is required. There are over 40 locations just in Lakeland, but there are many others throughout Polk County. So many meal sites are located at places like schools and churches. They offer breakfast, lunch, snacks, or supper. We're such in the South. We call it supper. I love that. I'm from the South. To find a location, you can use a site finder online. You can text Food FL to 877-877, or you can dial 211. So if there are people watching this later on, please make sure that you get that to your community and your churches and your neighborhood centers, that there are places where students can go for meals. So other than that, and I do want to mention Marianne. I've worked with Marianne a long time as an advocate for students. We had some great conversation. We still do. And we can have really tough conversations, but like people have said already on this board, she's honest and she's fair and she's a true advocate. And so I really respect what you've done, and I appreciate your work. And everyone else, have a great summer.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Ms. Campuzzello, if you'll bear with us just a few minutes, I'd like the other speakers to come forward, and then I'd like to invite you forward to speak at your leisure, and I think we have a card we'd like to give you as well.